How's it going? I see Agnes, I see Karen, Abby, Alexa, and Alex, Alice. Hello, Patricia. Hi, Lauren, Janet from the UK. Thanks for joining us. I'm not sure what time it is in the UK, but thanks for joining. Oh my goodness, so many people. Oh my goodness, Patricia, it's Mardi Gras. I did not know today was Mardi Gras. I'm so behind. Happy Mardi Gras, everybody, if you celebrate it. We see Sam from South Carolina. We see people from Ontario, Massachusetts. Awesome. Georgia, Dublin. And Lisa, I heard you enjoyed the last webinar, so thank you for joining us again. Cool. I see Miami, Florida. Nicole's in London. Nicole is in Arkansas. Awesome. Oh my God, so many great. Oh my God, it's just pouring in. Texas. We're from Texas too. So if you're a neighbor to Austin, you might see us around. New York, we go there often. North Carolina, Vancouver, Calgary, Portland, San Francisco. Oh, I see one from Austin. What is this? Amanda from Austin. Fresno, Scotland, Winnipeg, Canada. Oh my goodness. We have 336 people from all over the world. So that is so awesome. You just started including our webinars into the Planoly content calendar so you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. So if you guys signed up through the content calendar, through the Planoly content calendar, raise your hand. I would love to know. And do you guys like it? Like, awesome. Oh my God, that's so cool. Great. Yeah, so we'll be including a lot of any of our digital or in-person events within the content calendar. So that way you guys stay up to date with anything that we're doing. And of course, if there's anything that's like social media related, that might be, useful for you to know. So that way when you're creating your content, that you're just like, okay, great. I know it's National Pet Day. I need to create something for that. So we're making content planning a little bit easier for you. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. And if you guys have any ideas on how we can improve the product, like let us know. Awesome. I see Erica says, it makes it so much easier when it's there. I don't have to look a million places. Awesome. And Earl, yes, this presentation will be available for replay. So tomorrow I'll be sending out a link through Zoom. So just as you got the the reminder email this morning, we'll go ahead and be sending it out tomorrow afternoon. So keep an eye out for that. It'll include the link and also a link for next month's webinar. So that way you can sign up and be ahead of the curve on that. Oh, and Lisa asked, what is the content calendar? I meant content calendar, sorry if that was a mistake. Content calendar within the Planoly planner. So Monica says, great idea to have the holidays and significant dates within the Planoly calendar. Yeah, we want to make, we want to make the tool as efficient as possible for you guys. So anything that can make your life a little bit easier so that way you can plan, schedule your content, put your phone down, put your laptop down, so you don't have to be like on Instagram all the time. That's, I mean, it's better for you to like schedule your life online so you can enjoy your life offline. Awesome. Cool. And Micah, we already rolled that out. So that's already a feature that we already have out. As you look into your content calendar, you'll see that there's little kind of like, I can actually share my screen with you so you can see. And if there's any dates, we're actually coming up with another update. So if there's any dates that we haven't included, you can include your own dates that are important for your brand or for your, for your Instagram, so that way you can keep in mind what dates are important for you to keep in mind when you're creating content and planning ahead of time. So let me just share my screen with you guys. Okay, so this is the pin planner. Let me just switch to my Instagram planner. So as you saw the calendar, you'll have little notifications for everything. So for today, if you signed up, if you didn't sign up for the webinar through here, you'll see it on the calendar. And then for example, like March, we will have, actually let's hide away my quick schedule. So you can go ahead and mark anything that you want. So if it's like Planoly events, if you want entertainment holidays or just general holidays, if it's global or US, you can go ahead and save, toggle those on and save them, and then you'll see them within your content calendar for when you're planning. So now March, there's World Wildlife Day, there's International Women's Day, St. Patrick's Day, International Day of Happiness, World Poetry Day, Twitter's birthday, Pi Day, just like things to keep in mind when you're creating content. So that way, when you're planning out everything, you know, okay, today's Mardi Gras. I should have known that. I didn't have my switch on, but it's there. So that way, you know, okay, I need to create content for Mardi Gras or World Wildlife Day. I need to create content for that. It'll be there for you. And same for entertainment. If like the Grammys or the Academy Awards apply to you, then you can switch that toggle on. If not, you can switch it off. Anything that applies to you, you can go ahead and switch it on or off. So let me stop sharing. Okay. And yes, it is Planoly. Cool. All right. Okay. So if you guys have any questions on this webinar, make sure that you include it, and I hope I'm pointing in the right direction, the Q&A box right here, or if not, it's here, it's below. Just go ahead and include any of the questions that you have for the webinar here, because I will answer them after the webinar runs. Because if they get in the chat, there's like a million comments and I won't be able to track them. So I will be able to see them in the Q&A after the webinar. So yes, Monica, you'll find it within your settings and you switch to global. And I can do that one more time before I go into actual topic. So let me do that one more time so that everybody can see. So this is the planner, and then you go to settings right here up top, and then you switch on to, sorry, I wish I could annotate. If I can draw right here, settings. And then you'll click into settings, and then you'll find either the global, the US, or the Planoly events. You can switch the toggle on for whatever you want to include within your content calendar, even if it's other. So I'm just going to switch all of them on and you'll see them reflected onto the calendar. You'll save, and then everything gets included. We've even included Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week. And if there's, yeah, and then soon enough, we will be including a setting where you can include your own dates that are relevant to your own brand if we haven't included them ourselves. Obviously, we can't put every single holiday there, so you can customize it to your own liking. So cool. All right. So let's go into the webinar. And thanks again for everybody who joined. Right now, we're going to be talking about developing your brand voice and creating captions that are captivating and really bring your audience into the conversation. So again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in here. It'll be a 30-minute webinar. We haven't shown it to anybody. The way that we run these webinars is that we have the live segment and then the recorded webinar. This is the first time anybody sees it, so this is the first time you guys will see it. And then from there, we'll go into the Q&A. So we'll answer those live. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We have, wow, 434 people. I don't think we've ever had that many people in our webinar. So thank you everybody for joining. So with that said, we'll go right into the webinar. If you have any questions, just drop them into the Q&A and I'll see you in a minute. Hi again, everybody. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Priscilla. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Planoly, and we're going to be talking about developing your brand voice and creating really cool captions that are meant to captivate your audience and get them engaged. So first things first is understanding what exactly is your brand voice and what are the characteristics that make up your brand voice. And just as you would do any visual guideline that you would, visual brand guide that you would make for your brand and identify all the characteristics that are set for your brand that all your audience can identify with. For example, with Glossier, you can identify their visual brand guide as very pink, very minimal, very airy. They have set a very distinct visual brand guideline, and hopefully you've done the same with Planoly when you look at our grid and any of the things that, creatively we create, but the same should apply for your brand voice. So you should just identify all the characteristics for your brand voice and give it some personality when you're actually creating that brand voice characteristics. So your brand voice is born out of the unique identity that is your brand. So what helps your brand stand out against the noise as well? You don't want your brand voice to be very similar to something else that you've probably seen. The reason why it's your brand, it's what makes it unique. So don't try to mock or, replicate anything else that's already been done. Do your research, of course, and understand what's already out there in the space and create something that's very unique to you and also feels authentic. And understand how you're actually differentiating it to stand out against your competitors. So that way there's not something that your audience probably has already heard before. So first things first is considering your brand's core values and your mission statement. So before anything, that's what you should set first, and really understanding what your brand stands for, what are the core values that you're externally pushing out to your audience so that way they know what you stand for and what your mission statement is too. Once you have those set, you can really understand what kind of brand voice you're really going to set out for. And understand, okay, this is our mission statement. How do we align our brand voice to meet that in a way that actually resonates rather than just, okay, this is our mission statement, cool. Like there's no, you need to give it some like personality. And also understand how are these unique to your own brand versus competitive brands. What are some of the things you see lacking in the market that could be, an opportunity for your brand that you can offer for your audience? If you see that there's like a missed opportunity that the market hasn't met yet, then capitalize on that. Take an opportunity and go ahead and fill that gap. And then finally, how will your brand voice reflect the core values and your mission statement? Obviously, you've already set those mission statements and the core values, but your tone and voice and all the characteristics that are set for your brand voice should reflect those. So a great way to really set a brand voice is how would you actually describe your brand as an individual? People resonate to actual individuals, like, understanding who is behind the computer or who's behind the phone. So a great example is Nasty Gal pre-2017. So when Nasty Gal first started, this is the reason why they became such a cult favorite, because they had actually created a really distinct brand voice that tons of millennial girls could really relate to. So when they started, the brand was established to be coming from the quintessential millennial cool girl, confident, unapologetic, and a trendsetter in her own definition. She was funny. She didn't hold back from speaking her mind. She was a little rough around the edges, but she empowered the Nasty Gal community to do the same, but still march to the beat of their own drum. And she was absolutely like a no BS type of girl. What she wasn't, however, was conservative, polished, quiet, reserved, serious, corporate, or preppy. Anything that you would think like an antonym of whatever Nasty Gal was, you would basically line those out. And the way that I essentially mentioned Nasty Gal being is what you would do for your own brand. How would you identify that brand voice as an individual? Like, who is your girl? How would you, or guy, like, how would you really identify them and give them characteristics behind the voice that they're trying to amplify within social, within the blog, with any external messaging that is targeted for your audience? So a great way to just line out the way that I had lined out Nasty Gal is doing the same thing for your own brand and creating a voice outline, brand voice outline. So start off with key elements that essentially you can draft out your brand voice if you don't know where to start. So establish the characteristics of your brand voice and apply the description to each of them. Essentially say, what your brand is, but also elaborate on it. So for example, Nasty Gal was very unapologetic. In what way? In what way were each of those elements a characteristic that applied to that brand? So in the way that Nasty Gal was unapologetic, in any other captions, they were very, in your face. They were very they didn't care. They were sometimes a little rude. They would, or not so rude. They were just a little bit push the edge a little bit. And sometimes they included curse words in their captions, and that was just a part of their brand. Don't think that because some other brand included curse words or, just was very straight and direct in their captions, that's something that you would do. Everybody's different. So include what are those examples of, your brand being, unapologetic, how those characteristics apply to those examples within your brand voice. And then explicitly state what your brand doesn't do and steers clear from, so that there's no gray area in what your brand is and isn't. Obviously, if you know what your brand is, cool, but what do you need to know for anybody who handles your brand voice that they can't, have to make sure that it doesn't touch on? So for example, earlier I mentioned that Nasty Gal was not conservative, was not polished, was not quiet, was not reserved. So they were very pro-feminism, and if they weren't, then they would probably shush on those type of topics that were a little bit more in your face and a little bit more provocative. So make sure that if in case any brand manager or social media manager or content creator, whoever comes in, understands that whatever voice that they're building on will touch on certain topics and knows to stay away from other topics that, aren't a part of the brand voice. And to that point, as long as you have a set brand guideline for your brand voice, brand identity, whatever it may be, you should have it clear and concise, either in a doc or a deck, so that way anybody, like I mentioned, has a clear understanding of what your brand voice is. But that way, you stay consistent. That's the key to having a brand grow through and through, be it through social, through your blog, whatever it may be, even through video content. It's in the matter of staying consistent. People are so savvy on social and on the digital world. So if they understand that something's changing, that the tone of voice is changing, that's kind of how people are like, oh, wait, this is not the brand that I had, signed up to be a fan of or signed up for their content. If there's something that doesn't meet those guidelines based on the expectations that you've set for yourself and your audience has set for yourself, you need to make sure that you stay consistent, because if not, that'll turn them off. You'll dissuade them, and then you won't have that, engaged, dedicated core audience and, cult following that brands like Nasty Gal had built in, the early 2010s. So make sure you stay consistent through and through. So another thing, when you are actually creating your brand voice guidelines and everything, all the characteristics that apply to it, do your research and understand how to speak to your audience's language and understand their culture, their subculture, their niche. I think a lot of brands, especially the ones that are trying to amplify to a younger demographic. I remember there was a time around 2013 where there were a lot of brands that were trying to target millennial audiences and kind of trying to speak their slang through their digital slang, I guess, that they had picked up through Instagram, Twitter, and Vine. And there were so many brands who were just using hashtag Bay and hashtag goals, and it just felt very inauthentic, and you could feel that there was somebody a little bit older behind the camera or behind the phone, behind the computer, that was creating these captions that really didn't do their research and trying to understand the audience that they were targeting. Obviously, there are Gen Zers, there are millennials, but within those generations, there are subcategories. So you can't just think that because there's a millennial, you're going to be talking in this
stereotypical millennial slang or stereotypical Gen Z slang, you really have to do your research and understand your audience, understand their subculture, understand their niche and the niche that you're catering to. So that way your brand voice and what you designed actually reflects that, rather than coming off like, oh, it's like my aunt that's trying to speak my language. So really make sure that you're understanding who they are. And if it's somebody who, for example, if you are catering to a younger audience, then get somebody on your team that actually is part of that audience. You don't need to, feel like you're putting on a mask and pretending to be a Gen Z or a millennial. Get somebody on your team who's actually that person and can actually speak that language. And another thing too is making sure that you talk to them, not talk down to them. This is another thing that I've seen a few brands do, that essentially just talk down to their audience, and it never really works out well. You have to make sure that you're talking with them, building a conversation, not just, telling them to do X, Y, and Z, and that this, that, and this. It should be always understanding that you're building a conversation, talking with them, understanding them, and really building a forum within your social channels, be it your content, whatever, brand voice, wherever your brand voice is reflected, that you're making sure that you are constantly keeping a conversation open. And then, of course, staying true and authentic to your brand voice and your audience. It's making sure that you're not pretending to be somebody that you're not. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're pretending to be like a Gen Zer or a millennial, will come a little bit inauthentic. But if you truly understand your audience, if you truly understand their needs and can speak their language, even if you're not a Gen Z or a millennial, then you can come off with authenticity. If not, it'll be kind of like if you're just trying to, pretend to be somebody just to, build a business on it. People can really understand. People are so savvy on the internet. They can do their research and understand who's behind a brand within 2 seconds. So make sure that if it does come to that, then you can really tell your audience why you're you're creating a brand targeted to them. For case in point, Glossier is targeted to millennials and Gen Zers, and it is a big brand that is, so prominent with Gen Zers. However, Emily Weiss is not a Gen Zer, but she knew what to cater to them and understood how to speak their language, and that is why they're one of the unicorns, startup unicorns within the, business space today. That's why they're so successful. So take cues from brands like, Glossier, and many other brands that you feel like are cult favorites that have established not just like, a really, set customer base, but a cult following that, is reflected on their social media, has tons of followers, has tons of engaged users that go beyond just buying a simple product. So think about it like that. So a few of the ingredients that come into developing a brand voice. Number one being brand tone. So what is the tone that you're creating within all your content, be it, a video, be it a caption, be it a blog copy. What is a tone that you're going to keep consistent through and through all your channels to make sure that it sticks to your brand voice? Like I mentioned earlier, Nasty Gal had a very distinct brand tone for before they got bought out by Boohoo. And the same reflected through Sophia Amoruso's social channels. Like Nasty Gal was Sophia Amoruso. So it was very distinct to how she spoke. And that's how they created Nasty Galaxy, the Nasty Galaxy book. That's how they had created the blog, which was very much in line with that tone. So keeping that consistent. And the same goes for brand personality. There should always be some type of personality that you're kind of adhering to a brand tone. People want to know who they can kind of relate to and identify with, that they can, the minute that they read a caption or a blog post, they're like, oh yeah, that's my person, that's my girl, that's like who I know. They can even like feel you as a friend. And then of course, like the type of vocabulary that you're going to be using within your brand voice and within your brand copy. I'm sure that if I started using some, very super, over the top, like marketing jargon, that would be a little bit off for us is making sure that, understanding marketing and how you learn things is accessible to anybody, be it you're a small business or, you're part of an agency, wherever you lie on the spectrum, it should be accessible to everybody. So if I start using all these terms and, super scientific or advanced vocabulary, maybe that'll dissuade the small business owners, the solo entrepreneurs who are just getting started on social media. So for us is making sure that we keep our vocabulary consistent through and through to be accessible to everybody. And that's how you should do it for your own brand. But if your brand it is targeting, more advanced marketers, then of course you're going to be using more specific and more advanced vocabulary that is specific to that audience that perhaps somebody who's just getting started wouldn't really understand. So making sure you keep consistent through that. And then of course the core principles within your messaging. Understanding if your messaging is set to inspire, entertain, educate, empower, and enlighten your audience, really understanding that you're not just creating copy just as something that's going to be put in a caption. What is the goal and intention of the copy that you're creating for your audience, for them to find some type of value in either following you, going to your site to read your content, engaging with you? It should always do one of those. And then, of course, brand word usage. If you're going to be using, slang or certain jargon that's specific to your niche or brand culture, colloquialisms that are just specific to it, making sure that if you are going to be doing that, that it's consistent and you're not going off of, something that your audience won't understand. And then, of course, maintaining consistency and cultivating a brand voice. That is very much the core of creating your brand voice and staying consistent with it. You want to make sure that you do understand it, that you do revisit it, and everybody within your company or your team understands what your brand voice is. So that way, you stay consistent. This consistency is very, very key in making sure that your brand actually grows. Consistency with visuals, consistency with a brand voice, consistency with everything that you do. The minute that you do, go off of not being consistent, then your audience will be a little bit turned off, will engage less, and probably not be as dedicated to you as you would want them to. And then, of course, be tapped in with your audience and allow your brand voice to evolve with them. So obviously, we wouldn't be using, if say, for example, that brand that I had mentioned earlier, that brand is still very much alive today, but if they were still using slang that they were using in 2013 today, it would feel so outdated. So make sure that your brand voice actually evolves with your audience, that you always stay tapped in with your audience and understand what they're talking about on a daily basis. So that way you can actually create content that's very particular to them, but also allows them to know that you're tapped in within the space, that you're not out of touch, and still relates to them through and through, even if it's evolving. So as I mentioned earlier, consistency is very much key. So when you are trying to build engagement and are trying to build captivating captions, consistency is so very core to that. So it's important that once you have a brand voice defined, that it stays consistent throughout any external messaging that your brand has, and that your messaging should always feel like it's coming from one person. No matter if you have 5 social media marketers that are creating copy for your brand, or you have like 10 different editors for your brand, or even if it's one, it should always feel like it's coming from one person. And the reason why I bring up Nasty Gal is because this is what made me feel very much in touch with them before they got bought out by Boohoo. I always felt like it was coming from one girl. It was always like the Nasty Gal. So I know that they had like a huge team before they got bought out, but it always felt very consistent. It always felt like it was coming from one person. Everybody that was on that content team that managed the brand voice, the brand visuals, all were on the same page as to what that brand was. And that's what made it consistent. That's what made it successful at that time. So keeping cues from those brands that you really, admire and see that they're consistent through their messaging, and do the same for your brand. The minute that, if you are bringing other people that are perhaps, creating another column within your brand and you're giving them their identity, they should still have some, there should be parts of your brand voice that should align with their brand voice. That's why a lot of people say, that person or that company isn't on brand for us. You want to make sure that even if you're bringing in other parties to collaborate with your brand, you have to make sure that they're on brand for you, be it with visuals, be it with voice, whatever it may be, that it always aligns. And then remember that your content should always be relevant to your audience. You're not going to be creating content that isn't relevant to them. Your content should always have some type of value that your audience is always going to be coming back for. And of course, tapping into, if it's enlightening them, if it's inspiring them, if it's, uplifting them, whatever it may be, give it some value that's going to make your content relevant to your audience always. So the reason why I also bring up Nasty Gal is because when they did get bought out by Boohoo in 2017, you could tell that the brand voice started shifting. And that's why they're not as prominent as they were. Obviously, like Sophia Marusa went on to start off Girl Boss and everything. But even when they were sold to Boohoo, even the Nasty Galaxy blog shut down. And it was hard to see that, once another brand took the brand into their own reign and, just started changing everything, that also changed the audience that it had captivated for so long. So you can definitely see the difference between those different times. And unfortunately, Nasty Gal is still alive. People still buy from it, but it's not that cult following brand that was in the early 2010s. So seeing that is really kind of like, you can see, all right, this is not who I would want to be if I'm going to be creating a brand that's going to be consistent through and through. Even if it does get bought out, obviously, like there's some liberties that we don't have anymore as business owners if a brand does get bought out. But I wish that even when Nasty Gal was bought out, I wish that they had kept their brand voice, because I feel like that would have made them still the brand that they were before and held on to that cult following. But once that changed, they also lost their cult following. People were dissuaded, and it wasn't as relevant as it was before, unfortunately. So when you are creating your brand voice, you want to make sure that once you've established it, that you can let it shine through your captions and any copy that you create for your brand. Obviously, we're not all Kylie Jenner, and we can't just have, one emoji and have millions and millions of comments from, a diehard audience. We have to work a little bit harder than that. So use all the elements of your brand voice that you've established for yourself to shine through your captions. So, of course, Instagram and platforms like Pinterest are visually captivating, but if your captions aren't actually engaging your audience, you can't rely on passive likes to build an engaged audience. And I want to emphasize on the fact that likes are a passive form of engagement. Sure, likes are great, but if your audience isn't actually tapped in, isn't actually commenting on your content, isn't actually saving and sharing, then you don't really have an engaged audience. Likes are great, don't get me wrong, but you should always take that next step in really captivating your audience to understand that your content is actually valuable to them. So a few of the elements to create a captivating caption, and how I mentioned earlier, there's these elements that really truly are intended to captivate your audience. So of course, inspiring, entertaining, educating, empowering, and enlightening your audience. If you hit any of these goals, then you're pretty much set to ensure that your audience is actually going to, do something beyond just liking your content. They're either if it is inspiring them, of course, Pinterest is set for that, so that way they can save it onto their boards. If it's entertaining them, then within Instagram, that's something that they might share to their friends within a DM. If it's educating them, I'm probably gonna save it within my Instagram folders, or save it on my Pinterest board. If it's empowering me, I'm probably gonna feel more, if you're touching me at the heart, then I'm probably gonna follow your brand. I'm probably gonna be a little bit more engaged. I'm probably gonna comment and tag my friends to help them feel empowered too. And the same goes for enlightening. If you're teaching me something, if you're, telling me something new, then I'm going to have a stronger bond to your brand rather than something that, is just showing me a pretty picture on Instagram. You have to understand that Instagram is beyond just, creating beautiful photos. It's very visual, but it's also a really great way to capitalize on storytelling and really understand your audience beyond just the like. So as I mentioned, use your caption, and you can use all these, tools and goals and strategies when you're creating your caption within Planoly. So use your caption as a way to really practice great storytelling. Sometimes people think, oh, my caption is going to be way too big, like my caption is going to be way too long and people aren't going to read it. But if you're consistent with that, if people understand that with every photo that you're going to be posting, you're going to be tapping into story time, and I'm going to sit down and actually feel, get something out of reading your caption, then people are going to like that. There's people that do appreciate that. There's other people that just want to see a pretty picture. That's totally fine. But there is an audience that really wants to read about you, about your brand, and wants to, probably read a lengthier caption that lets them understand a little bit more about your brand. And of course, it's all about human nature. Really show the human behind the screen and allow them to understand, oh, okay, this is, Quigley. Quigley takes beautiful pictures that, are very editorial and very fashion forward. However, every caption lets me know a little bit about her rather than just her, posting a beautiful picture with like beautiful clothes and everything. That's great and all, but every photo of her lets me understand her journey through creating her own brand, her journey as a content creator, her journey as a businesswoman, and really shows that heart of her brand that allows you to empathize with her and with any brand. And also making sure that you do build a two-way conversation. That's what social is about. So always make sure that you have some type of call to action or question within your caption that allows your audience to chime in on the conversation as well. You can obviously create a lengthy caption and just tell everything about yourself, but you won't, if you're not actually following through with creating a question, building a conversation, and even chiming in with your audience, then you can't really build a dedicated audience that will allow them to feel like, oh, I need to go engage with her content all the time because she's constantly building a conversation. She always engages. Like you want your audience to feel seen. You want your audience to feel heard. So make sure that you do that through all your social channels. Also make sure to include a call to action. So beyond just asking a question, of course, if it is that you want your audience to go to your link in bio and read your blog, or to do something to go to a different profile and tag you or tag a friend, whatever it is, make sure that you do have some type of call to action beyond just the like. I'm just gonna keep emphasizing it, that you do wanna go beyond just getting likes. You wanna make sure that your audience comments, you wanna make sure that your audience tags other people so that way you get more impressions back to your page, that you wanna make sure that people are clicking to your site so you're driving more traffic from Instagram. Think beyond likes. Very simple as that. And then of course, show your audience the value proposition with your content. Break down any of the resources that you're giving them within your content. So if it is that you're writing, for example, for us, any of the webinars that we show, we do a story before we actually tell people to RSVP, and we break down what they're going to learn. So maybe you saw this on our stories and you saw the 3 different bullets of what we were going to be offering within this webinar. That's kind of how we were breaking it down, rather than just telling you, hey, we're having a webinar, RSVP. You can join any webinar, but unless you understand what the value proposition of being here at this moment right now was before you RSVP'd, then maybe you wouldn't have signed up. So really break it down for your audience, so that way, one, you save them time and let them know, oh, okay, maybe I want to read more. Maybe I do want to RSVP. Maybe I will click on the link in bio and read that blog post. Really break it down for them so that way your audience understands that you are a resource that they can tap into all the time. And then, of course, always emotionally charge your audience. You want to make sure that you touch their hearts. I think, and then that's where we come, like, we can obviously teach you guys everything about marketing, everything about creating a brand voice. But what makes us a little bit different and what we really pride ourselves on is making sure that, you know, you can use these tools, use them within Planoly, schedule your content, and then put your phone down. We're a digital company, but we don't want you to stay on digital. We want you to make sure that when you already have everything scheduled and you've already, you know, thoroughly thought out through all your content and captions, and you already have your week set or your 2 week set, that you can actually take time to, you know, build your business on, you know, away from your computer. Spend time with your family. There's so many times that, you know, for us, or even the digital space, like, you know, we'll find ourselves just constantly looking at our phone and we can't really savor those IRL moments with the people around us. So that's what Planoly was created for. It wasn't created to keep you on digital. It was created for you to plan out all your content and then stay offline for as long as you can until you have to come back and create more content. And that's the heart of our company. That's the heart of why our founder created the company, so that way she can spend more time with her family. And so we want to make sure that you do the same. And that's the heart of our company. And you should have a heart for your company too. What makes people resonate with your company or your brand that makes them feel, oh, okay, like I understand it. They're not just trying to sell me a product. Obviously, like everybody's trying to sell something, but there's some differentiator that really makes it different beyond just, you know, trying to make sales. People don't like being sold, so make sure that your brand doesn't do that as too much. Make sure that you do go back to understanding if you're going to be educating your audience, inspiring your audience, empathize with them too. That's another big thing. And once you do all of those, you can really show the heart of your company and touch them right at the heart. And like I mentioned, once you understand all of these and, you know, start putting these into practice, then you can go ahead, share them, draft your caption on Planoly, save it for whatever time and schedule it, and then see it go, engage with your audience, build a community that makes people feel connected. I think that's like the beautiful thing about social, that, you know, for me, there's so many different niches and different categories of people out there. And the minute that you think, oh, there's not you know, an audience for that, there is. Think about like the missing components within social that your brand can capitalize on and actually offer an audience that hasn't been represented or hasn't been targeted yet. So do that with your brand voice whether you're creating blog copy, whether you're creating captions, whatever it may be. Make sure that you're always trying to captivate them and offer them something that they haven't seen yet. So with that said, we'll go ahead and dive into our Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, just go ahead and drop in all the questions within the Q&A box. I will not be able to see anything within the chat. There's probably a lot of comments there. So just make sure to drop them into the Q&A, scroll through any of the questions, and give a thumbs up to any of the questions that you probably want answered. And then I'll go in and answer them all. So thanks.
All right. Hi, everybody. I was actually on my phone answering a few questions already. So let me just switch out of there. Okay, so I've already answered a few. If you want to go ahead and check out those already. A few people had questions about limits on Planoly, but we only have limits based on if you have a paid account or if you have a free account, you do have limits based on how many uploads you can do. But I'll go into the questions that I have not answered yet. I do see a few questions, and I'm sorry that if it was blurry, sometimes I have to switch between the quality so it doesn't look grainy or it doesn't sound bad. Zoom is a little bit weird like that, so apologies if it was a little bit grainy. But let me just go to the comments really quick. I did see a question from Lindsay, and I'll tackle that one first before the chat box gets a little crazy. But Lindsay said, I love Planoly, but I feel like the quality of photos posting isn't as good as when I post myself. I work at a wedding venue and we get very high-res pics from photographers. Has anyone else noticed that? I feel like the pics when they post come out a little bit grainy. So with any content that you do upload to Planoly, we make sure that it's uploaded to Instagram standards. So if you, usually the pixel the requirements about 1800 to 1800 pixels. If you go anything beyond that, we will resize it to fit Instagram's requirements. That means if you get high-res photos from photographers and they're 6,000 pixels by 6,000 pixels, they're going to get resized and the quality will get reduced. So what you need to do is get these photographers to make sure that they give you a specific size photo for Instagram to upload through Planoly, so that way the quality doesn't get taken down. You can also do this yourself if you just go into Photoshop and resize it to make sure that the quality that we do doesn't get turned down. That is the best practice. Hopefully down the road, even any image that you do upload to Instagram that is like super, super high quality, you have to make sure that for it to be the best quality, you have it sized specifically to Instagram's requirements. So make sure you keep that in mind. Aside from that, you will not see, if it's sized correctly, we will not reduce the size or bring down the quality of the image. Just make sure it's sized specifically to Instagram's requirements. Cool. All right. So a few questions. Let's see. All right, let me just go into when the webinar started. Okay, there's a few questions on the calendar and I'll take my time with these. There's about 53 questions, so I won't get to all of them. If I don't get to all of them, my apologies, but a few questions on the content calendar. Can you show how the content calendar switch is on? Yes, I will switch that really quick. All right, let's get here. All right, so this is the content calendar. You go to your top right corner, and I'll go ahead and draw on it. So you want to make sure you go to your settings right over here. Probably shouldn't be round, probably should be red, right here. And then from there, you just click on settings. Once you see your settings, you'll see your marketing calendar standards and settings. And we do have a global setting, so that includes anything outside the US, and that goes for entertainment, holidays, and other. Then we do have the US toggle for entertainment, holidays, and other. Then Planoly events, including webinars. We will be adding like conferences, workshops, anything like that that's either online or in person. We will be including that soon. And I know somebody had asked if the customization tool for you including your own dates and important holidays will be, I don't have a specific date for that, but it is in our roadmap, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. So we're really excited for that, so can't wait. But that's on the content calendar. And I know a few people have like, how do you have your own date details? We don't have that yet. It will be coming out soon. All right. Okay, this is a good question. Soraya asks, hi there, happy to be here. Happy to have you here too, Soraya. This is a plan. Does Planoly have a hashtag suggestions, as it used to be? I remember Maurice to show me hashtags and numbers before. Unfortunately, we don't have that. That is a limit. Any limitations that we have are Instagram's own limitations based on their API. So because we are an Instagram official business partner, we have to abide by their rules. That is what makes us a safe tool to use. Instagram will not approve any third-party tool as an official business partner if it wasn't abiding by their API. So any limitations that we have, it is because Instagram doesn't allow us to do it. If we did it, we wouldn't be an official Instagram business partner. We wouldn't be a verified tool. So we make sure to abide by the rules to keep you safe and keep your content and your profile safe. So we don't have a hashtag suggestion tool anymore. However, there are other tools that don't link to your account that somebody in our past webinar had mentioned. And I believe it is called display purposes only. and I can show you guys that it doesn't do recommendations. Well, actually it does. So I'll actually share my screen really quick and show you guys that this is a pretty cool tool that I like using. And a student from one of the webinars had suggested it. So for, display purposes only, for example, let's put a few hashtags here. So say if we want hashtag architecture, then it'll scan on hashtags that are very similar to what other people within that niche would use, like hashtag architecture lovers, hashtag building, whatnot, and including the most popular ones and then the ones that are specifically more niche. There is no right answer for everything in terms of hashtags. I'm not going to tell you to use hashtag Instagood or hashtag InstaFam. There's so many hashtags, and if anybody's asking, this website is called for display purposes only, displaypurposes.com. It doesn't link to your account, so your information won't be compromised or anything. But yeah, you have to do your own research based on your own niche. One rule of thumb for hashtags is that you want to use a mix of hashtags based on ones that are kind of popular for your niche, and then others that are a little bit more specific, meaning you're not going to throw your content in a pool of like hashtag iPhone only when there's a billion uses for iPhone only. You want to make sure that you're targeting very niche hashtag groups and actually engaging with the communities within those hashtag groups so that way you can get as much engagement as possible. People, yes, they look at content within hashtags, but unless you're actually engaging and driving them back to your profile, people are most likely to engage back with your content. So make sure you take best practices, and we actually have some content on the blog. I think we actually did a webinar on hashtags. We do these webinars every month. So if there is one, I'll send a link for it on tomorrow's recap. So keep an eye out for it. But yeah, be a little bit more specific with what the hashtags that you're using rather than just using generic ones that everybody uses and your content's never going to be seen. All right. Okay, Shemaine asks, copying captions to Instagram comes out messy. I have the app, but I would rather keep everything streamlined with Planoly rather than jumping back and forth. Here's the beauty about using Planoly. When you schedule everything, you don't have to, if you have auto posts, you don't have to copy and paste everything. If you have a business account, you can go ahead and auto post everything. So that way, when you have something scheduled, it'll be your image posted along with the caption. You don't have to copy and paste everything. But if you're scheduling without auto post, all you have to do is just copy and paste. There's no messiness. There's no editing. Once you have it planned out and set to go on the Planoly app, then you can go ahead and copy that to Instagram when you're scheduling your content. So there shouldn't be so much back and forth. And if you do have to edit anything, you can edit your caption that you've already drafted on Planoly within Instagram once it's time for you to schedule. But there shouldn't be any back and forth. So. All right. Ooh, this is a great question. So Miriam asks, does Instagram like you less when you use third-party pre-planned automation for your posts? I've heard that they like live posts directly on Instagram. What are your thoughts? So like we mentioned earlier, we are an official Instagram business partner. So a lot of the tools and features that we do use are, Instagram does back us. So it's not like they're going to tell you to use a third-party app or use automated posts and then make you use something that's going to hinder your content. It's not that. So Instagram doesn't really care. They care about you posting to Instagram. The one issue that a lot of people see with lack of engagement is because they're posting on Instagram and not actually following through with an actual engagement strategy after they've posted their content. Meaning that if you're going to go ahead and auto post content and you're just going to post it and that's it, you can't expect people to actually engage back with your profile if you're not actually engaging with them. So what is going to be your posting strategy, and what's going to be your follow through engagement strategy? Think of that in a two-way form when you're actually planning content, posting content, and following through with it after you've posted. This is how you actually keep up great engagement. Of course, if there's a call to action and you're actually asking your audience to, have a conversation and give their insight, you have to be there on the app, even if you've auto posted, to make sure that you're actually keeping up with that conversation. Well, obviously we also have our comment tool, so you have to be active on either Planoly, on the comment tool, or within Instagram to keep that conversation going. That is why it's called social media, because we're being social, and social media is a two-way street. So you can't actually, don't think that just because you posted something, you're gonna, sit back and wait for your engagement to come in. It takes another step, so that way you can actually have an engaged audience and building that relationship. It's definitely building that community. So think of it like that. But back to the point, using a third-party app or using auto posts, anything like that will not hinder you or hinder your engagement. It's more about the strategy. Okay, sorry I asked. Always trying to keep my brand identity, but it's so discouraging to see that my posts are not seen, neither showing the hashtag search. Any suggestions about it? Yeah, I think it goes back to the last question. It's definitely having a full engagement strategy. So obviously we are a tool that allows you to post and everything, but think of it even deeper. There's layers to it, and think about building a great engagement strategy that's going to make your content, like even if your content's not seen within a hashtag search, how are you engaging with the hashtags that you're posting with? How are you engaging with the communities that are using those hashtags to make sure that your content is seen? Think of it in that way, and then build on the conversation, build on their conversation. Kind of, whatever you want within your profile, do it for other people too. So it's all about the engagement strategy. Sometimes content might not be seen in a hashtag search. That's fine. There's so much content being seen within those hashtag searches, but just think about how you're actually engaging with those hashtags and the community that you want your content to be seen by. Okay. So an anonymous had asked, can you show some examples of talking down to your audience? So I think this is more of a sense of like being out of touch. I have seen some influencers, brands who think they know it all, and maybe they do. That's totally fine. But I think with social, being that it is a community builder, you have to understand that you have to take a step back and talk with your audience and not talk down to them, kind of how I mentioned in the presentation. How are you involving them into the conversation rather than just you telling them what they need to do, what they need to buy, what they need to hear, read, like what they need to consume, rather than you using their feedback and letting them be a part of your brand conversation. And this is what I really liked about brands like Nasty Gal and Glossier, because they use so much user-generated content. It doesn't feel like they're out of touch because they're actually bringing in their customer, their consumer, their actual audience within the brand conversation. It doesn't, like for us, when we do these webinars, sure, we're teaching you guys, but we love to hear from our Planoly audience. We love to hear, like a lot of these webinars are based on what you guys want to hear. We're not going to tell you, oh, okay, like this is what you need to know now. We want to bring you to be a part of it. So that's very important to us when building our own brand, and any brand that's successful has done the same. I think sometimes I've seen brands that just are out of touch and try to tell or have certain expectations about what their audience should be doing, should be reading, should be saying, and then it falls flat. And then, the audience feels like, oh no, like I don't feel a part of this. But the minute that other brands give their audience a spotlight and make them feel like, oh my God, like Glossier noticed me. Oh my God, Planoly noticed me. Oh my God, like, who might be like any other brand, like the minute you feel noticed, you feel like you're being, like the brand understands you rather than just them dictating what you should be doing. So I hope that clarifies. All right, we'll do a few more questions. Oh, this one was a good question. Patricia asks, do you have any recommendation on a good balance between shop now product posts and posts that are straightforward, that aren't a straightforward call to shop? Example, 3 posts a week are shop now and 5 other are content, behind the scenes, etc. So I'm curious to know, Patricia, and I don't know if you're still here, if you have an actual like ad buy strategy within Instagram and Facebook that do have like that very specific shop now, buy now type call to action. Those are the type of posts that you want to reserve for ads or ad buys. With social, you want to make sure that you're building more, at least for us, in terms of like what works for us. You will see our features, you'll see our new updates, but for us, we like to bring you in as a user based on storytelling, based on like the brand, the heart of the brand, our mission statement. Like that's what brings in people to, you know, for one, being a follower, and then maybe down the road we'll get you as somebody who will subscribe to a Planoly plan. The same thing goes for like Glossier, that they're like a perfect example because I'm so drawn in by the brand, what the brand means, how it resonates with my own personal brand, and then the product just ends up selling itself in terms of like how it's drawing me in as a potential consumer. The shop nows don't really do much for me because if I'm following you and I've, you know, most likely I have bought something or I am going to buy something if I already followed you. What I'm trying to do, if I am trying to get people to buy something, is hitting them with an ad. Maybe the ad will actually help. Or I'm trying to throw myself to somebody who might not even know me and maybe get them as a follower or maybe have them consider me as consider buying. So there's like, you know, the level of like awareness, consideration, and actual purchase. So think of it in that step. I would say keep it cool on, or keep it low on the shop now product call to actions, because eventually people will buy your product. Show more of like the benefits of using your product rather than shop now. Like, why should I be buying from your product? Why should I give you my money? Because your brand actually aligns with my brand and people who are my demographic like pertain to this product, things like that. Don't tell me, oh, sale 30% off like today, use code. Like, okay, you can use an email blast for that. Maybe I'll click the email blast for that. But for Instagram, that's not, I don't see a lot of people doing that, and I don't see a lot of ROI from that. Make sure that you're, for specific shop now or sales messaging, you're using specific platforms for that. If it is like a Twitter and an email blast, that's what you will use it for. But for Instagram, you want to make sure that Instagram stays as a portfolio for your brand, be it for a new user, for a new follower, or somebody who's already followed you and can really like see, okay, this is what this brand stands for. This is why I like them. Maybe I'll sign up for their email blast, sign up for their sales. I'll follow them on Twitter to keep up to date with whatever sales are going on. Maybe I'll download their app. That's kind of how I use ASOS. So think of it in that way. How are you going to be using the actual grid versus stories? So find out your strategy. There's no clear answer for this, but in terms for like the grid alone, I would not be using the shop now, but like sale today call to actions. Maybe use stories for that. So I hope that clarifies. All right, we'll go for a few more questions. I know we're like running a little over, but oh, this was another great question. Katie asked, do you have any tips on getting Instagram verification for my brand that is under 10,000 followers? I've attempted to get my company verified and have been denied several times. I've tried using their driver's license as well as pay stubs to show that the company brand is valid, but nothing has worked. And it's funny because we get this question all the time. People are trying to get our help in terms of getting verified. There's no clear answer. There's millions and millions of requests that Instagram deals with on a daily basis, and they go by a case-by-case basis. So one key that I have heard is that you have to build your brand presence online. it's the reason why, like, if Gwyneth Paltrow, I believe she already has an Instagram, you know, the minute that she started her Instagram, she got verified from day one, is because she was already like a prominent public figure. Like, Instagram could go on and Google Gwyneth Paltrow, and they understood, oh, this is something that needs to be verified. However, for me, I don't have like a huge presence. If you Google me, you'll probably understand that I work at Planoly, but I'm not necessarily a public figure that Instagram feels like they need to verify. So although I put in a request a bunch of times, I still haven't gotten verified, but that's all a case by case basis. I would say, you know, build your presence online, make yourself known as a prominent brand or, you know, public figure. If Instagram can just Google you right off the bat, and then, you know, you've built your presence within like the first page of Google search, then you're more likely to get some type, like, be able to get verified. But there's no clear answer. There's no like, okay, if you do this, you can get verified. It's all a process, and it's a lot of patience. So just keep trying, build your presence, and hopefully you get verified soon. All right. Let me do one more question. And again, if there's any other questions that I don't get to, just make sure to, and if there's any support questions that are specific to your profile, make sure that you email support@Planoly. We'll get back to you within a day, or make sure to just DM us at Planoly on Instagram. Our social team gets back to everybody, so we can answer any of the questions you guys may have. So I'll answer one more. Okay, ooh, this is actually a good question. Tammy asks, can you help me understand how many hashtags should I use and if they should be consistent? So I know a lot of people think like they need to use 30 hashtags in order to get their content seen. It's not about the number of hashtags that you use. It's about the type of hashtags that you use. Like I mentioned earlier, you're not going to be using hashtag InstaGood, InstaFam, iPhone only, like all of these hashtags that are constantly being used by billions of people or have billion uses. You want to make sure that you're being very strategic with the hashtags, making sure that they apply to the niches and the communities that you're targeting. So even if it's like 4 to 5 hashtags, you have to make sure that they actually have like a very engaged audience. You do your research, look into those hashtags, see what type of people are actually engaging with that content, and then use those. Maybe use a base of hashtags that you can put into your Planoly hashtag manager, and then you can see, okay, for example, for me, I have a hashtag collection for just Austin because I live here in Austin and I go to a lot of places in Austin. So I have hashtag Austin, hashtag things to do in Austin, hashtag like Austin life, like these little hashtags that I use along with the hashtags that I use for the filters that I use. So I use Visco film, other hashtags in there. So those I use as my base hashtags. Then specific to the content that I'm posting, say if I'm going to like South by, I'm gonna put hashtag SXSW 2020 because it's South by 2020 rather than just like all the South bys that, you know, have been going on. Maybe I'll add a South by SXSW too, but my core one is SXSW 2020. So that was more specific to what's going on in that time. Being more specific and detailed with the hashtags doesn't mean that you should be using 30 hashtags. It doesn't mean that you should be using 15. If those hashtags are the ones that are working best for your brand, those are the ones that you should be using. Don't use the same ones all the time. Make sure that they're very specific to the content that you're posting. Cool. All right. Yeah, there's so many questions. I'm so sorry, guys. I feel I just want to answer one more question. Okay, I already answered a few of these. Okay. All Right. Yeah. A few of these I've already answered. Yeah. Talking about hashtags. But again, like, you guys can go into the Planoly blog. We have so much content, and we're actually going to be creating more specific content. I saw somebody talk about any advice on creating content for a mortgage company. And funny enough, we actually just created a blog post for the real estate community. So we're curious to know, like, if you are still here and you're in a specific niche, like if you're in healthcare, if you're in, maybe I can do like a poll. No, I'll do it for next time. But if you guys have, a specific niche that you'd like for us to tap in, say if it's like fitness, health, healthcare, if it's you as a teacher, as an educator, if you're working in furniture, whatever it may be that you want us to kind of elaborate on, we're curious about those niches. We're looking into how you can create your content strategy beyond just being a brand or an influencer. Like, how can we dive into your specific niche so that way you're creating the best content possible? So definitely let us know. I'm like curious to know nonprofits. Nicole, thank you. Like, actually, I definitely want to look into nonprofits. So looking into that, we're actually in touch with a few of them. Breweries, life and health coaching, amazing. Children's clothing, weddings. Yes, we actually have a blog post coming up on wedding photographers. So yeah, different vendors for what, and I know there's like so many different vendors for weddings, not just photographers. So yeah, cool. Awesome. Yeah, sustainable fashion, education, interior design, home organization, self-care. Placenta encapsulation? Okay, you're gonna have to tell me about that one because I've never heard of that one. Food blogging, handmade products. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we'd love to, if there has been something that we haven't touched on, let me know. We'll get on it. We write so much content on the Planoly blog. Maybe the next webinar that we do can be specific to a few of these. But if you, and Samantha, you can let us know through Planoly at Planoly on Instagram. Feel free to dive into there, or tell me personally at Code of Conduct on Instagram with all Ks. So yeah, no, I'm really excited about this. Again, like I mentioned, we want to bring you into all these conversations and then the content that we're creating to make sure it serves you, rather than just like us telling you, okay, this is what you need to do, cool, follow. There's no formula that works specifically for everybody. I mean, from this webinar, there's so many things that you could take and apply to your brand, but of course, the same processes aren't going to work if you work in skincare versus education, obviously. So we're trying to learn best practices from people that are, at the top of their game in those specific niches and categories. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was really great, and I hope that this was insightful and that you guys got a lot of stuff. Again, we will be sending out the replay tomorrow on via Zoom. Zoom will be sending out the email. And if you have any questions, be it support, anything about this webinar, feel free to email support@planoly.com. Make sure to DM us at Planoly on Instagram, or if you want to ask me personally, I'm at Code of Conduct, and I'll put it actually here on the chat box. Code of Conduct on Instagram. You can just DM me. I'm always available. But yes, I will. The email tomorrow will also include the next webinar's links for both the Instagram 101 and that one we actually go deep dive into support questions, and then we'll do the next strategy webinar too. I'll include all those links so that way you can stay up to date with everything that's going on next month. But again, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you in the next webinar. Thanks.